Welcome back. My name is Jacob McDonald. I am Anything Lacrosse, and this is a game that never sits still. On today's episode, we will be talking about the preview for Week 2. Now, Week 2 only has 2 games. They are some very exciting games. Saskatchewan, Calgary both haven't played. Neither is Halifax. Oshawa coming off that win. They're an exciting team to watch, so can't wait for that. Also, we've got a big interview. Graham Perrow, lots of writing experience, has previously wrote for LIL Inside Lacrosse. He's an independent journalist now, NLLstats.com, creator of that, just so many amazing things. And I'm a big numbers guy myself, so talking to him and just getting his perspective on some stuff as an absolute huge numbers guy and just has been around for 25 years now watching lacrosse. There's only so many guys that have been around that long and around that league, and to be such a fan for that long just gives you that extra perspective and that deep knowledge into the sport. So awesome time interviewing him, and stay tuned to check that out. After the interview's over, we'll be going over the NLL power rankings the league just put out. There's a couple spots and teams there that, it's still so early, but there's definitely one snub in there, which is pretty wild to me. But we'll see what happens. The power rankings aren't that big of a deal anyway at this point of the season. And then I just want to touch base on the Mighty Oaks, the documentary that's coming out too. So stay tuned for all that, and we'll get right into this. So right off the bat, we're going to be starting with the preview of the season. All right, let's start off today by talking about Oshawa Firewolves versus the Halifax Thunderbirds. Halifax has got its home opener. Oshawa's coming off a win. This is going to be an interesting game. I actually kind of figured this was going to happen starting the season. I figured that Oshawa would beat Toronto in their own barn, and they're going to be coming in hot coming into Halifax. So, Oshawa beat Toronto 8-7, squeaking out a win. It was a very, very close game. Oshawa, I don't think a lot of their guys, to be honest, played to the best of their ability. Not saying they didn't play well. I just think that there's more in the gas tank than what they showed the other night, offensively anyway. The back end, on the other hand, played absolutely phenomenal, shutting everything down. Jameson, if you can get a performance like that out of him every night, I mean, it's going to be hard to beat Oshawa with a guy like that. And I don't mean to sound disrespectful or sound, that they didn't have a great night, because I mean, some of them, they were pretty good. There were definitely some really stellar goals from them, and it could have been a lot higher too. Rose made a couple really nice big saves when it needed. With all that being said, though, I do think that Dyson could be better than he played the last game, in my opinion. Anyway, but not to just call him out in specifically. I just think there's a lot in the tank for him, and we'll see what happens. But I think that overall they played great, and they're going to be coming in here strong. But slowing down and stopping the Toronto Rock. Toronto's got a lot of weapons, and they really did shut down the veteran presence in Toronto as well. So, that's the thing. Halifax is a veteran team, and they're going to know how to adapt. I think they're a lot stronger than Toronto personally. So it's going to be a harder game for them. But from Oshawa's point of view, offensively, but this is arguably you're going to be going against probably an easier goaltender, because if you're just looking at numbers, not saying I still think Warren Hill is going to be, have a better year, but if you're talking about Rose, I do think Rose is the better goaltender there. And I mean, they have so Halifax, to start talking about them, Halifax being at home, having the extra week of essentially training camp, and really getting prepared for this week. I think that it's going to be interesting to see. I think that Halifax is going to be ready to go. I think that this is their season. When I was listening to their coach talk there, he's sounding very, very confident in this team. Obviously, every organization is going to sound like that, but to me, it didn't sound differently. He's talking about load management, which I know everybody hates, but if you're talking a winning championship team, it does work. I remember watching the Raptors back when they won their championship, and they brought Kawhi in, and everybody was, kind of trashing on them for letting him not play that much in the regular season. It worked in the end, and that's the kind of same thing you're going to see here. He already talked about this isn't going to be Warren Hill's starting job, really. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but he basically said, the better goaltender will play against what team they play better against. He said Warren Hill has a harder time playing against certain teams. So whether it'll be Getty or whether it'll be Hutchinson, we'll have to see. But, I do think that they have some options there in net. I do think that at the same time, I am a believer in Warren Hill. Don't get me wrong. I think he's going to have a bounce back here. And I think that he is a solid, absolutely amazing goalie. You have to always have a plan B, right? Even a plan C. And that's kind of what Halifax has going for them. Halifax has a lot of scorers, a lot of guys who can score, right? You have Cody Jamieson. Jammerman. He, he can just pot him all day. You got guys saying he might be the MVP at the end of the year, which I could possibly see. You got Randy Stotts that's coming back. He's supposed to be back right away. He's supposed to be ready for game one. You have you have a Bomberry that they brought in, right? He's a nice little pickup for them. I know he's going to play more off the back end, but he's still going to be really solid in there. You have a lot of guys that can score on that team, on that Halifax team, and they've been playing together a long time, so they already know how each other plays. That back end is hard to play against. Hosak. You've got Tyson Bell back there. Tyson Bell's a champion, right? And it might not be in the NLL per se, but he is. He's won. He's won the Man Cup a couple times, and he's an animal, right? And he knows how to transition really well too. That's the other thing that I don't think Tyson Bell gets enough credit for is his transition game, to be honest with you. He's really good at it, and he's a gritty player. I love Tyson Bell, man. I'm so pumped to go down and watch this game on Friday to see all these guys, and I think it's going to be a really cool experience. So pumped to see them. And for this one, obviously I'm going to have to I said this right from the beginning. I think Halifax is going to win this season. I think they're going to have a fantastic season overall. And I think it all starts with the first game of this, like the first opening night. Halifax to me is in a top 4 spot in this team or in this league. I think they're a top 4 team in this league. With that comes those expectations to win, right? And this is a game they almost have to win. There's only 18 games a season. So every game is so vital to win. And the other thing is you have teams that are in a kind of a, I don't want to say a higher class, but a top tier level, right? Saskatchewan, Buffalo, Vancouver, all these teams are kind of, I don't want to sleep on Oshawa because I'm a big Oshawa guy too, but there's teams that are more complete than them. Halifax is right there. As long as the goaltending can do it, they're right there in that top tier, in my opinion. And that's why I'm so confident, because I do believe in Warren Hill. So I'm pumped to go down and watch them play, watch them win at home. Oshawa, it's not a really big deal. I think this might be a little bit of a different situation if Oshawa would have lost last week. Now that they won, they're going to have to come in, We'll see what happens, but I really do have faith in Halifax winning this weekend and starting their season off. I think, like I said, I could see if everything went perfectly, Halifax ending up with 14 wins this season. Also more realistically, probably sitting around 11, but it could really see them winning that 14 games this season. And I know it is the closest team to me, but I'm not quote unquote a fan of them. I actually just like watching lacrosse in general. I try to be neutral. I might end up becoming their fan this season. Who knows? But I just look at it objectively. And to me, objectively, they are a top 4 team in the league. So everyone says I'm always kind of high on them, but I am. But they just have such a deep, strong team. And I think it is their year this year. It's kind of their window. They're in their window, and I know they're getting older, but they do. It's funny. They have 3 first-round picks this year, and they have got some young guys coming up. So it's they are aging out a little bit. They're getting up there, but they also have younger guys coming in. So, and with 3 first-round picks in this year's draft specifically, if they hold on to all of them, that's a rebuild right there, essentially, to be honest with you. If you haven't checked out this year's draft coming up, go look at it, because it's going to be this year's and next year's are going to be league changing. It's insane, and multiple players that could do it. So interesting, very interesting for Halifax. So we'll see, but I do think they take this first game for sure. Now, I will say for Oshawa, I do give the goaltending to them, obviously, the goaltending edge. But other than that, I have to say the offense and the defense goes to Halifax. But Jameson, honestly, if he played like he did last week, he could steal them the game. And it really, like I said, nothing. It's I love Dyson. I called him out as my dark horse for the MVP. I still think he's still an amazing player. I do think that he's going to have a much better game this week too, right? We'll see. Him, Alex Simmons, Ty Kurtz. This is going to be a banger, boys. It's going to be a banger. And if Oshawa can, I will say this, if Oshawa can pull off the win against Halifax, they're going to be looked at as a cream of the crop team after that. I will tell you that. And they're not going to be a team that you're going to want to play against, because if they're beating teams like Halifax and Toronto, it makes them look pretty legit. I'll tell you that. And it could happen. Don't get me wrong. That's what I love about this league. I would say it. Anybody could beat anybody on any given night, but at the end of the day, I'm going to give it to Halifax. I do believe in them. And I do hope I get to see them win at home because I want to see the crowd there when they're winning. And I do hope it's a tight game right to the end and they pull it off at the end or something. I just think that I'm a big storylines guy. I just think that would be amazing. So we'll see. I'll be there watching live, and I can't wait to see some of the guys that I've met on here and talk to. I get to give my jersey away to the fan there that won it, and it's just it's going to be a great game overall. I'm going to bring my kid. It's going to be his first NLL game, my first NLL game live, and I think it's just going to be a great time. So we're pumped, and I'm bringing my buddy with me. So he's not a lacrosse fan, but he's going to become one after we go there. I guarantee you that. So anyway, game 2 we have Saskatchewan versus Calgary. This is an interesting one. Okay, Saskatchewan is my favorite to win the championship this year. And I only say that because I think that they have so many guys who can score. They've got top tier goaltending and a duo. So even if, God forbid, something happens, they've got a guy who can step right in and play and be phenomenal. They've got a great defense there. And they've got, like I said, so many guys who can score. And they're going in with almost the same team as they did last year that went to the finals. They're one guy is out, one guy out, one guy in, right? So Saskatchewan this year is going to be scary. Robert Church, I went and looked at his stats, okay? Because I don't consider him a superstar. I don't mean that disrespectfully. Don't get me wrong. I didn't consider him a superstar because he put up 35 last year, okay? He's getting a little bit older. Anybody who puts up 30 goals is still a star in this league. What I meant by superstar, and I always want to clarify this, is like a Teat, a Dane Smith, something like that, like a 100-point guy, right? He's probably like an 80-point guy, roughly, right? Maybe 75 to 85, 90 kind of range, right? So still very, very talented player. And I went and looked at his previous stats, and I mean, he's had 50 goals one season, which he's had 40-plus goal seasons. So I would say he was a superstar at one point. I just don't think he is anymore. I think he's more of a good, solid player, star caliber, but not that level, cream of the crop kind of guy, top 5, top 10 guy. Now, he could maybe come in and prove me wrong this year. I love when guys prove me wrong, by the way. But I'm not even, with all of that being said, it's not a bad thing, okay? They have a lot of guys who can score. And that's the sauce in Saskatchewan, man, is that they can score with so many different people that you don't know where it's coming from. And in my opinion, that's how you win. Even look at Buffalo last year, who won the championship, okay? They scored with so many different players. And that's what Saskatchewan does too, right? So I think that they're, right now I would say they're my favorites to win. Halifax, I think I would like to see Halifax win. I think that they are going to win, but I think Saskatchewan, in my opinion, is the favorite to win. I think that they have the team, the coaching, the management, everything they need is there to win, honestly. So this is an important first game of the season for them to get off to a good start. They were tied for first place last year. I expect them to be that same position, first place or tied for first place, depending on how everything goes. And, like I said, they're just so deep right up and down. Now let's get into Calgary, okay? Calgary has nothing to lose this season. They might have internal pressure. I'm not going to speak on that. I don't know. But I can tell you from the media side, from fan media side like myself and other people, and from pretty much everybody in general, they are projected to finish last or second last. That's just where everyone has them, right? And so when you're playing from a point in that kind of, you get to play with nothing to lose. You get to go out there and just try. They've got a young team, right? Walsh could really step it up and steal them games. He's a solid goaltender. And again, I like it because he's got a little chip on his shoulder because they kind of, in a sense, Vancouver booted him out for Christian and said, you're not good enough, in a sense. Guess what? Every time he plays Vancouver, don't you think that's going to give him a little bit extra, a little bit more animosity? And Calgary already seems to not like Vancouver, honestly. The fans and just the teams and stuff. I wouldn't like them. They just stole 2-year players, 2-year stars. I wouldn't like them either. So I can understand that as a fan, why you would like Vancouver. And I love it. That's how we build rivalries in this league, right? Calgary went 3-0 in the preseason. The Calgary, Noah Manning. Absolutely huge performance to one game there. They've got some guys over in Calgary that are young, that are hungry. And like I said, the thing about this game is you never know. I have Calgary finishing last, right? And I do think they're going to get about 3 wins realistically, 3-4 wins this season. But I just think all the other teams are deeper and better. But like I said, anybody can beat anybody, so who knows? And to be honest with you, I love chaos. I love it in sports. It's the best when there's chaos. So guess what would be more chaotic? Calgary going up and smoking everybody. That would be the most chaotic thing you could ask for. So I love that. And I think it creates great storylines when, like I said, when they're down and out, when they're down, nobody believes in them. You can just go out and play freely, right? We're not supposed to be winning. The only downside to this is that they don't have their first round pick this year. So when they finish low, it's not gonna, it doesn't gonna benefit them. It's gonna benefit Toronto, and that's unfortunate. And that's why I don't like trading first round picks away. But I've talked about that a lot, right? Like I just don't think it's a great move. So this Calgary Saskatchewan, it's always a nice little rivalry I find between those two, just in general with the people. I used to live in Alberta. I know Saskatchewan and Alberta have this weird, kind of rivalry thing going on, just like other provinces do, right? Like I find Nova Scotia and New Brunswick's a little bit like that. So more Nova Scotia likes to trash on New Brunswick. New Brunswick's more just chill, laid back. It is what it is. But I get the same kind of feeling between Calgary or like Alberta, Saskatchewan, but Calgary and the rush there. So again, I love rivalries, and I think it helps the sport grow. And I think that this game is going to be a great game to watch on a Saturday night. I'll be tuning in, and I really, as much as I think Saskatchewan's going to kill it, I hope the Calgary can make it at least a close game. I'm obviously going to take Saskatchewan in this one, but this could honestly, you never know, right? That's all I'm going to say. So, but I think I'm hoping to see Robert Church have a big game. Zach Mans, all the boys, Shanks, all the boys over there. Calgary, I would like to see some young guys really see some development. Walsh, I hope he has a good game. He looks solid, looks like their guy. I really hope they found their goaltender, after losing Christian. And, that's pretty much it. So not that much of a preview because there's only 2 games this week. This is the only week like this, I'm almost positive, this season. So, this is going to be it's going to be a slow week for lacrosse. But I mean, if these games are like the other games, we're still going to get a couple amazing games of lacrosse this weekend. The nice thing is really you just get to watch one or the other. We'll be doing the Discord. We'll be in the Discord, all that kind of stuff. I guess at this point, I should shout that out. Go join the Discord. Lots of great guys in there. I keep trying to add. I think we're at around 100 guys right now, or 100 people, right? We've also, there's just always good things going on, especially during the game days and stuff like that. And there's lots of different chatter going on. So check it out. Also, go check out the merch store if you're looking for any merch. I got the hat on as always. My sweaters are super warm. I try to go for quality over anything else while keeping the price relatively low. So check those out. And now we're and go follow the socials, all that kind of stuff, right? Give me a follow if you haven't, like the video, all that kind of stuff. So with that all being said, let's go right into the interview with Graeme. So Graeme was one of the first people I actually followed on X. I think it was like him and Dawson were 1 and 2. Maybe not that close, but like they were pretty, like Graeme was one of the first guys I followed. He, I think I posted some stuff. He may have even corrected me on some stuff, which this is the thing. I think a lot of people get like, especially on the internet, they get mad when people correct them. I'm not like that. I'm glad when people correct me because if I look like an idiot, let me know, Or if I'm saying something that's wrong or my facts aren't right, please let me know. I love when people correct me. I really do. Just ask my wife. So anyways, Graeme puts out a lot of great content. He writes a lot. He does it. Obviously, he's made money here and there throughout his career. We're going to talk about that a little bit. But he does this for the love of the game, just like I'm doing it, right? I don't make money to do this. Not yet anyway. But this is just for the love of the game. This is try to grow the sport. This is try to, increase exposure. We need more guys like Graeme, writing this stuff. Now, this is a nice thing, right? Graeme is a really good writer. He even said it himself. He doesn't really like broadcasting. It's not his thing. He's a writer, which we need, right? You got to go roll into your strength. And that's why I'm trying to, talk to different people. And I love talking to, intelligent, educated people about this sport. First off, it makes me learn, and hopefully it brings some value to you guys as well. That's the main thing. Graeme has, he has the NLL stats.com, and that is amazing, right? That has all of the updated stats. More stats are on there than they are on the actual NLL site. Why the NLL doesn't buy that off of him, I don't really know, or at least get it together. But for I think he does a great job, and it's a great service for the community of lacrosse to keep those stats updated. Because I just went to check today, and the NLL actually did update their site for the stats that just happened. But previously, it's for me before I even knew about NLLstats.com I had a hard time really gathering stats together. And when I'm, as a new fan who's trying to figure out what the heck's going on, what players are good, I'm a big numbers guy myself. It's nice to be able to go to one general area and find some stats. So with all that being said, I wanted to thank Graham for getting on the show and all that stuff. It was it was an amazing interview. You're about to see it. And, I'll probably have him back eventually because he's got a lot of insight and stuff like that. So really interesting to talk to. I hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get right into the interview and get started. I want to welcome to the show and thank you for being here. How's it going, Graeme?
Great. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, man. So just give us kind of a rundown of your time spent in lacrosse, your background, all that kind of stuff.
Sure. My background in lacrosse is none, actually. I never played lacrosse as a kid. I didn't know anything about it while I was growing up. It basically started when I was 30, believe it or not. My friend Mike, his nephew played for the Rock. A guy named Sean Williams. You may have heard of him. So I knew that they had Rock season tickets, and sort of it was kind of in the area that I knew lacrosse existed, but that was about it. I'd never watched a game. I'd never seen it on TV or anything. And in 2000, Sean played for the Bandits. So I went with my friend Mike and a few other friends down to Buffalo to watch him play. It was a Bandits versus Wings game in 2000, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I was already sort of a big hockey fan, big baseball fan. And it was exciting. It was fast. It was high scoring. It was just everything about it. I loved it. And they had Rock season tickets. So I joined in with them the next year, which was 2001. I've had Rock season tickets ever since. Yeah. So my background in lacrosse is purely as a fan.
That's awesome, man. I really didn't find lacrosse as well until I was after 30. So I just started watching, back in February during the hockey all-star or the NHL all-star break, when there was nothing else on. And the same thing, it's a sport that really, once you see it, it really grips you and hooks you in.
Absolutely. A lot of people have said, once you see a lacrosse game, you're hooked for life. And I certainly know people for which that's not true, but there's an awful lot of people where it is. Yeah, I've talked to other people who are, also big hockey fans, sometimes big basketball fans as well. And because the sport's a good sort of mix of both. And yeah, it's amazing how many people sort of, kind of a hockey fan, kind of a basketball fan. Holy crap, this lacrosse thing is awesome. And yeah, they get hooked for life.
Yeah, it's funny. I hear that comparison a lot. I always compared it to hockey, but a lot of my comments always say, basketball is a good comparison. I can see both, and I can see why both fans could instantly get hooked on this if they've seen it. So what do you think? Do you think it's more like basketball? Do you think it's more like hockey?
I would say more like hockey. It certainly looks a lot more like hockey than basketball, but you do have sort of the pick and roll sort of aspect and the shot clock and various other sort of things that are a little more specific to basketball than in hockey. And now I watch so much lacrosse now, when I watch a hockey game, every now and again, I think, what are they doing? Right, they don't have to do that in hockey. There's no shot clock, or there's no over and back. So there are all of these rules that don't apply to hockey. And I'm like, don't do that. That's a bad idea. Okay, in hockey, I guess it's acceptable. So I do get a little confused sometimes because I watch so much lacrosse.
Yeah, man. I mean, I watch as much lacrosse as possible too, and I find it's a bit faster than hockey myself. I'm still a massive Leaf fan, unfortunately, but that's okay.
Same.
So, is there one moment that you can really pick out that hooked you as a fan into lacrosse?
One moment. I think possibly the next year, and this will be a bit weird. I started watching The Rock, so I became a Rock season ticket holder, never having actually seen a Rock game. The only lacrosse game I'd seen was that Buffalo Wings game. But I did sort of get hooked on it that season. And I think kind of the moment I knew, okay, I'm in this for good, was when they got to the championship and they lost. They had won the championship in 99 and 2000. And then I got there in 2001. They got to the championship game and lost to the Wings. And I remember that feeling of we were that close and couldn't get it done. And right away I was like, okay, well, next season we'll, make these changes, or we'll do those sorts of things. Me and my extensive lacrosse experience, knowing exactly what kind of changes they'd have to make. But then I realized, okay, I'm trying to think about how we can do this next year. And I'm talking about we being like, I'm a member of the Rock and I have the power to make these kind of decisions. And of course, that's what fandom is all about. But I think it was kind of at moment I realized, okay, I'm in this. It's not just I'm going to watch this for a little while and see how it goes. Once I sort of started planning for the next season, and we were planning a vacation for next year. Well, I have to make sure that it's not during lacrosse season because I'm not missing any games. So sort of at that point, I knew, okay, I'm hooked on this.
Yeah, for sure, man. I completely understand that feeling because I had to rush home Friday night to get home for the opener. My daughter had a cheer competition. I was seeing her and then took off after that, right? So I completely get it. And I think that fans, without fans, there is no sport. So I think it is a big key piece. And we need more diehard fans like this in lacrosse. Like,
Well, in about 2005, I started my own blog, not related to lacrosse, but it sort of as everybody did at the time. There were zillions of blogs around everywhere. And so I was writing about, I saw this movie last week and it was great, or it sucked or whatever. And here's some new music that I bought, or just whatever I felt like talking about. And of course, sports came up. So if I had watched a Blue Jays game or a Leafs game or a lacrosse game, I would write a bit about that. And that was fine for probably 5 years or something. And I think my total readership was like people I knew. And so it was, a dozen or 20 people or something. So it wasn't much. But I wrote about it just because I liked writing. In about 2011, I found a blog called the NLL blog. And it was just a couple of guys out of Edmonton who were writing about the Edmonton Rush and bits about other stuff in the NLL. And I sort of emailed them and said, hey, do you want another writer? I'd love to write for you guys. And they said, sure. So I joined them. And then like 6 months later, they sort of merged with In Lacrosse We Trust, which is still around. And so I joined them and I wrote for them for a few months. And then I just decided to go out on my own. I started up NLL Chatter, started writing for that. I actually started writing for IL Indoor the next year, Inside Lacrosse. And I kept that up till about 2020 when I left them. So I'm sort of stuck with NLL Chatter. That's what sort of my focus is now.
have you ever kind of wrote something that has gotten you into trouble or, that you've had to maybe jump the gun on or anything like that?
Not so much on the blog. I do remember a tweet that I sent out at one point, just kind of a joking thing, and it was a brain dead thing, but it was during the Mann Cup a few years ago, and I just looked up stats on the Mann Cup and realized, okay, the last 20 Mann Cups were won by these 4 teams, right? The Chiefs had won a bunch of them. The Lakers had won a bunch of them. Salmon Bellies had won a bunch. I don't even remember who they were, but something like the last 22 or 25 Mann Cups had been won by only 4 teams. And I said, is anybody else even trying? This was during the Mann Cup, and the head coach of I think it was the head coach of the Langley Thunder, who were playing in the Mann Cup against the Chiefs, emailed me or not emailed me, but responded to my tweet saying, this just shows your lack of knowledge of lacrosse, making a stupid comment like that. And I'm like, you're absolutely right. That is a stupid comment. Obviously, everybody's trying. And just the fact that only 4 teams have made it is a bit of a quirk, but it doesn't mean that nobody else is any good and doesn't mean that nobody else is trying. So I kind of got a bit in trouble there. I did apologize and he was fine with that. But so that was kind of a dumb thing to say. So it was my own fault. But I think that's the only time I've really gotten in trouble so much.
Yeah, man. I mean, when you put out as much content as even you do, or, I do, or any of these other media guys, I think there's going to be times where you say things that, maybe you don't mean, or maybe you're not thinking through, or you don't know enough facts about it to actually be talking about it, but you're kind of on that track and you kind of get, kind of slide down that slope. So I think it happens to all of us, and all you can do is kind of keep pushing, and, it can't really distract you. But I think if you take accountability for it, that's all that really matters.
Yeah, I think once I said, yeah, you're right, that was a dumb thing to say, he was okay with that. It wasn't me saying, you personally are obviously not trying hard enough because you're in the Mann Cup and you're going to lose to the Chiefs. But that's not what I was saying. I said it was a bad attempt at humor and apologized for it. And, we're.
Oh yeah, man. No, it happens for sure. And I mean, that's the thing about text too. You never know the tone and everything. So, I know you're a big stats guy. I'm a big stats guy myself. I'm a huge number guy, especially when it comes to all this analytics and stuff. And I have to credit you for the NLLstats.com. I use that thing as my main reference because the NLL site in general is usually behind. I just went and looked at it. They do actually have it updated right now. But I mean, before that, I don't think they updated it for a while. Just tell us how you broke that down and how'd you decide to start something like that?
Well, the article that I wrote every week for Inside Lacrosse from 2012 to about 2015, 16 was called the Moneyballers. And so what it looked at was clutch players in the NLL. So basically we would assign points to goals that tied a game, goals that put one team ahead by 1, so broke the tie, as well as game-winning goals, goals in overtime, that sort of thing. And the later it happened in the game, the more points it earned. So basically, they're looking for players who are showing up big when it counts. And I'd keep track of all those points. And so what I did was keep track of those points in a database because I work for a database company during the day. That's my day job. So I kept track of that in a database. And of course, to do that, I needed the game stats from every single game. So I was continuously downloading all of the game stats to put in this database to get all that information out. And while doing that, I realized I can do all kinds of interesting things with these stats. And so I'd write them, a lot of times it was for IL Indoor, but I'd write stuff for my own blog as well as analyzing these stats. Like I'd look at face-off stats, for instance, and say, figure out how many times the team that won the most face-offs in the game actually won the game. And so basically, do face-offs matter and what do the stats tell us? So I did some sort of interesting analysis there. But eventually, like I had all of this information, but it was on my computer. It wasn't on the internet. I couldn't get it to the internet is basically the problem. And it wasn't till 2022, 2021, 2022, somewhere in there, where I figured out a way to get it there so that I could have all of that data available and show all of this sort of these numbers and basically anything that I could think of to do with that data, I could do on this website. So I came up with that. It took me a long time to figure out how to do that without it being incredibly slow, but it seems fast enough now. And went live with that. I think it was at the end of 2022 or the end of 2023. Can't remember now, but only a couple of years ago. It was kind of here's this website. What do you think? And I expected a few people to go, hey, that's cool. And everybody else to go, whatever. But a lot of people have jumped on it and said this is the greatest thing ever. The kind of the reason I did it was that whenever I was downloading these stats for the IL Indoor stuff, every year I'd have to change how I got that because the league was continuously changing stats providers. So one year the page would be formatted this way and I download it. The next year they'd reformat the page or it was a different company and they'd have to have it entirely different. So I kept having to change this continuously. And a lot of the times, once I was looking at, say, the 2017 data, all the 2016 data was gone and I couldn't find it or I couldn't find most of it. And I thought, I need a place where all of this data is always there and consistent so that everybody can look at it and get the same information on a game in 2017 as another game in 2008. So that's kind of where that came from and why I did it. It's because I was too frustrated with the way the league set up their stats that I wanted to do it myself.
Yeah, man, I'm like, I really appreciate that you do that because as you know, as a newer fan, it's great to actually be able to go access all that data. And even if you're comparing straight up the NLL site compared to your site, you can do so much more in-depth like research into stats on your stuff compared to the NLL site. So it'd be nice to see them kind of implement you in there and get that going. Because I think they should be probably where really the gold standard for stats, right? But great work with what you're doing. Well, anyway, is there a stat? I know you mentioned the face-offs, like that you went into depth and to see with, how it correlates with face-off wins compared to teams that win. Is there a stat that teams kind of overlook or even fans overlook is kind of one of those stats that really do make a difference in the game?
It's a good one. Cause turnovers, I think, is important. It's one of the few ways to sort of evaluate defenders. And not all defenders are big with cause turnovers anyway. That's maybe just not their job. But there's a million stats for offensive players with goals and assists and loose balls and that sort of thing. And the loose balls is something that comes up with defenders as well. But without the cause turnovers, there isn't an awful lot to distinguish between different defenders. And like I said, there's still some cases where certain defenders are really good at that, and others don't get the high numbers, but are still effective in other ways. But I like the fact that I'm saying there is something now because cause turnovers didn't show up until about 2011. So for all the games before that, there was nothing. So I think that's a helpful thing to be able to focus a little bit more on defenders. It's certainly not the case where you look at a team and say this team had 20 cause turnovers in this game and this team only had 7. Obviously, this team won or dominated or played much better. Like any other stat, that's not always going to be the case, but it does give you a bit more insight than just goals and assists and things.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of different, this game's so fast moving and there's a lot of different pieces that I think that there is certain things that add to the game that some people overlook. My thing's always loose balls. Loose ball pickups are a big one for me. If you could introduce one stat to the NLL that they're not keeping track of, what would it be? Mine would probably be like, time on the actual field or playing surface, but what would it be for you?
Time on the floor was actually there in 2000 or in 2020. So the
Okay.
COVID shortened season. So we had about 2/3 of a season. And they were keeping track of time on floor for everybody. And that I thought was really interesting. The other stat they had that season was plus minus, which was borderline useless, I think, because for all the offensive players had huge numbers because they're just not on the floor when goals are scored against them. And all the defenders, as good as a defender might be, they're on the floor when a goal is scored against them, and they're almost never on the floor when their team scores a goal. So all the offensive players had huge numbers. All the defensive players had huge negative numbers. It didn't really tell you anything. But time on floor I thought was useful. The one that I might add is, and I think I wrote an article on IL Indoor about this, was splitting out loose balls into different sort of categories. So there'd be offensive loose balls and defensive loose balls. I think I even had one or two others. Like a loose ball that you get directly off a face-off is good, but it's probably better to know how many of those somebody has versus how many offensive loose balls they have versus how many defensive loose balls they have. So if we could split those out into 2 or 3 different sort of subcategories of loose balls, I think that would tell us a lot.
I actually really like that. I didn't think of it that way, but I really do like that take on it because you know what, that's a huge different category. And if you're picking up defensive loose balls or offensive loose balls, so that's really interesting. So, what's the biggest analytics trend that you're seeing that will change the game over the next few years?
There were Cooper Perkins, who's the play-by-play guy in San Diego, had a website last couple of years. He's since not stopped doing that, but he went into incredible amounts of detail on all kinds of different stats and analytics and things like that that aren't on my site. And the reason they're not is because I basically take everything from the game sheet that I can get, put it in a database, and then do clever things with it. What he was doing was actually watching the game, recording other stats that aren't there, and then taking those stats and doing analytics with it. So he would be able to say, he had things like pick assists. And so how many times did somebody set a pick that led directly to a goal? And that's the kind of thing you're just not going to see on a score sheet. But if you see a player that does that a million times and it leads to a ton of goals, and this other player doesn't do that, it's just other ways of comparing players and seeing how effective they are in certain situations. So that's just one example. He had dozens of them, but I think it took him, an hour and a half per game, if not more, to go through the game in real time and pause it every now and again and keep track of all of these kind of stats. So it just took a lot of time for him to go through all that. So he doesn't do that anymore. I know those kind of things are available in things like basketball, like the NBA, and in the NFL, and those sorts of things where there are thousands of people that will take time to do that sort of thing. With a much smaller group of people focused on the NLL, nobody has time to do that.
Yeah, man, that's actually a really interesting thing too. I mean, I hope as the league grows, we can get more advanced stats going and, maybe with power of AI as well. I'm a big AI guy. Hopefully that can help analyze and speed things up. But I think those are some really interesting points as well, man. So let's just move on to the some season, it's only been week 1. We're heading into week 2, but some early reactions for you. What's your biggest surprise from week 1?
I guess Vancouver losing to Colorado was a bit of a surprise. It's not an absolute shocker because with as many changes as Vancouver made to their team, you can't really expect them all to just gel and be a cohesive unit in game 1. I don't think it'll take them long to get there. They have the talent, obviously. They have the coach, obviously. A lot of the players on that team, because they were teammates in Calgary before, know each other's sort of tendencies and that sort of thing. So I think they'll be fine in the long term. Well, in the long term, probably game 2. And Colorado is looking really good. I listed them among my teams that will probably not make the playoffs. And now I'm not so sure about that because they looked pretty good in the preseason. They looked really good in game 1 against Vancouver. I still have some potential questions about their offense, but in that game, Ryan Lee, Will Malcolm, Andrew Q, really all they needed. They may need more secondary scoring if any one of those 3 gets injured or has to miss some time for whatever reason. If they can get Eli McLaughlin back, that will really help. I don't know what the timeline is for that. So I guess my biggest surprise so far is Vancouver not playing as well as we might have expected and Colorado playing better.
Yeah, man, I find Colorado's they're kind of a slept-on team by a lot of people, even including myself, I was sleeping on him until the preseason. After the preseason, I was really, higher on them, but they've definitely, I still do think they need one more big piece on the forward to really propel them into that next level team. Okay, so what about? I know you mentioned Oshawa's goaltending in one of your articles this week. What do you think about Jameson? Where does he sit in the league for goalie wise? Just in general, how much of a difference maker do you think he is for Oshawa?
He can certainly play with the best of them. He was goalie of the year, I think, in 2020. I'm not sure he's been nominated for goalie of the year other than that, maybe once or twice. But so he hasn't got the big awards. Nick Rose has only one goaltender of the year, but I think he's been nominated about 4 times. Matt Vince has like 30 of them. So when Jameson is on, he's one of the best. When he's not on, he's still decent. And I think that was kind of happening more in the last year or two. But he's had summers, and I don't follow the summer leagues all that much, but I sort of pay attention a bit here and there. And I think he's had summers where he's just outstanding the whole season. So if he can be like the best version of Doug Jameson all season long, Oshawa has a really good shot. And he certainly looked like that in game one. He was matching Nick Rose. He probably had a better game than Nick Rose, but yeah. So when like I said, when he's on, he's one of the best, and certainly gives Oshawa a chance to win in each and every game.
Yeah, it's really it was kind of like a battle of the goalies this weekend, to be honest with you. In a lot of these games, right? There weren't that many really high scoring games like you see in other weeks and seasons and stuff. So, and I do find the goaltending is just really strong this year for most of the teams anyway. So, which team's week one performance do you think fans are completely misreading? Who did really good? Who did really bad? And then do you think it's, what team do you think it's not that big of a deal for?
Buffalo kind of started off slow, but then came back and ended up winning the game. They weren't as dominant as we might have expected from Buffalo, especially since a lot of people have picked Georgia to not do that well, but Georgia played really well. So I guess Georgia played a little better than expected. Buffalo not quite as well, but and good enough to win, which I guess is all you really care about. And if your team is winning and they're not winning 16-5 every single game, that's okay. Toronto lost, but I don't think anybody should be too concerned about that. Like I said, they played a really good game as well. Nick Rose was excellent. As Adam Levy pointed out in an NLL.com article, the new rookies on the Rock played really well and sort of led the team in scoring, but Matthews had 0 goals, and Dowek had 0 goals, and Dan Craig had 0 goals. So all the rookies were doing great, and all the veterans weren't so much. So if they can get that a little more even, I think they'll be fine. Oshawa showed that they were a strong team. San Diego is another team that I picked to miss the playoffs, but they had a really strong game as well. And Ottawa just looked like Ottawa. Everybody looks at Ottawa and says, how can the team with Jeff Teat on there miss the playoffs? And well, they've done it like 3 times now. And I think they are going in the right direction. They picked up Rob Hellier for the other side. Now defenses have 2 very strong players to pay attention to, and I think that's going to make a big difference to Ottawa. Didn't so much in game one. I mean, he and Teat both scored a bunch of goals, but wasn't enough to get them the win. But I think as they sort of figure each other out, Ottawa will be fine as well.
Yeah, man. I mean, there's a lot there. Like the Ottawa situation, Hellier on the other side. I mean, there's a 1-2 punch there now, but they definitely need some more scoring. But to Toronto, like, you must be super hyped. Like, Dawick as a GM, Jamie has done a fantastic job bringing these young guys in, getting the draft picks. And what I was seeing from preseason was they were really relying heavily on them. I wasn't sure if that was going to be their game plan heading into the season. It looked like it is. Do you think Toronto is going to be a playoff team this year, or do you think they're just going to miss?
I think they'll probably be in there. I think I picked them to finish sort of in the middle 4, so they may not get a home game in the first round. But I think losing Tom Schreiber is big. And I was a big fan of Corey Small as well. I think the 2 of them did really well together. Corey Small and Mark Matthews particularly played really well together. So Mark Matthews is back and healthy, which is great. And I'm less worried about losing Small and Schreiber because of Hiltz and Kirsten. They have looked excellent, not only in game 1, but in all 3 preseason games as well. So they played different games, obviously, than Small and Schreiber, but those 2 plus Sam English I think is more of a defender, but he'll play up front now and again as well. And now with Challen Rogers playing out the front door instead of the back door, I mean, he can play anywhere and he'd be more than effective. But with those 2 new guys and Challen Rogers up front, I'm certainly far less worried about Toronto's offense than I might have been knowing that Schreiber and Small weren't coming back.
Yeah, I mean those guys are both big losses to them. But the young guys seem to be kind of stepping right in, and even might be a little bit of an upgrade. Depends on how you look at it. Definitely different styles, but so offensively gifted. It's just insane. Sam English was amazing. I watched him in sixes this summer, and he was the second best player on the team next to Teat. And it was just that those kids, both those brothers are special. So with all this offensive young talent, I think the Rock are probably gonna win the Rookie of the Year. Depends on who it is. I think they're the easy front runners for that. Who would you say out of the rookies that are going to take that home this year if you had to pick right now?
Don't know. I've really waffled on this. I've heard a lot of people talk about Hiltz as the front runner and Kirst behind him, but it's kind of hard to compare. I do like the way that Hiltz and Matthews play together. They seem to be I don't know, on the same page or something, that they're passing to each other and around each other. I really like it, which is odd because Matthews is 6'5" and Owen Hilt is like 5'8". So just the two of them together looks a bit odd, but they make it work. And Kirst seems to sort of play all over the place, but it looks like he's one of these kind of guys who can score from distance or score in close or dive across if he needs to, or score from behind, or he can just score from anywhere. And I think he's going to be a lot of fun to watch. As to which one has the better season, yeah, I have no way to know, but it's going to be fun to find out.
Yeah, I mean, Owen Hiltz had a great game too. He had 2 goals. Kurse had 2 goals, maybe should have been 3, and then 2 assists. So big night for him as well. Sam English, the same thing is like I could see him sneaking in and being a little dark horse at this point too. If he continues the production, he was like, because those again, loose ball pickups, I think he had 11, got a goal, couple assists, like just a really overall great game for him too. So what's one early prediction you already think you might be wrong on? Because I know I have a few for sure.
Given now it's a sample size of one, so it's
Yeah.
to be taken with a grain of salt. But Colorado missed the playoffs is looking kind of suspect. Like you said, if they get one extra body up front, whether that's the return of Eli McLaughlin or if they make a trade for somebody else, they're not too far away. And I have to say, San Diego looked a lot better than I was giving them credit for as well. I looked at the names of the people that they lost, including like Kyle Rubish and Rob Hellier, and the people that they brought in. I thought, okay, well, they were pretty good last year. I made the playoffs and everything, but they've kind of gone down a little bit this year. But a lot of teams have surprised me that way in the past, where I thought, okay, they lost these two guys that contributed 120 points, and the guys they brought in contributed 40 to their teams the previous year. So obviously that's a loss in production, and then everybody surprises you. Some people just step up their game. Some players play better with other people. Some people need a change of scenery in order to flourish. It's so hard to tell. Another team that I may, and they haven't even played yet, so it's hard to say, but I've seen it in the past where a Calgary loses a whole bunch of players in one offseason and replaces them with rookies. And we all think, okay, well, they're just going to finish last. And then in a couple of years, they'll be really good. And the next year, they either make the playoffs or they just don't play as badly as everybody thinks. So I'm starting to think, even though they haven't played yet, Calgary may I'm not sure they'll make the playoffs, but they certainly won't be as bad as people have said they're going to be, given the number of people that they lost and replacing them with rookies.
I mean, it's funny you bring up Calgary because I obviously have them at the bottom of the league. I still think I have them there right now. But in the preseason, I think they went undefeated. They had some guys that really stepped up. Manning, Walsh looks good. They do have Calgary's got really, in my opinion, thing to lose this season. And when you're in that position, it's kind of, you can just get out there and play. And with a lot of young guys, a lot of young talent, you never know. And that's what I love about this league so much.
Yeah. And with a guy like Josh Sanderson behind the bench, he's going to be able to say, look, everybody's picking us to finish last. So if we finish anything other than last, we've beaten their expectations. So the expectations on us from everybody else are low. Obviously, their expectations for themselves are going to be higher, but it kind of takes the pressure off, especially the rookies, to say, you got to come in here and you have to perform and we have to make the playoffs or it's a failure. They might just say, just get in there and play, do your thing, show us what you got. And that pressure is kind of reduced, and that can certainly help.
Yeah, that's absolutely, man. And I love storylines, and I love when things kind of don't go as planned. So I think it's going to be awesome if they can kind of pull it out. So let's transfer over like to state of the NLL here. So do you think, in your opinion, you've been around the league for a long time, right? You've been watching this league since like 2000. Do you think We're trending in the right direction. I've noticed a lot of growth looking at numbers wise, what is available from from basically when they came back from COVID till now, the numbers have exploded. So what's your opinion on how the NLL's trending, and are we going in the right direction?
I think so. I mean, it's certainly easy to look at teams like Buffalo and just say, oh, they're bringing in zillions of people, and that's obviously helping Buffalo. It's obviously helping the league as well. That's easy to do when you have a powerhouse team like Buffalo. But Calgary is bringing in zillions of people as well, and they don't have nearly the powerhouse team that Buffalo does. Toronto's numbers last year didn't look great because they played in a tiny little arena, but I think it was sold out almost every night or very close to it. So now that they're back in Hamilton, we'll see how that goes if they're back up into the 9, 10, 11,000 range in a bigger arena. So there are a couple of teams that are suspect. Georgia's not doing great, I don't think, in terms of attendance, on the brink as far as we can tell from the news that we've heard. And so there are a couple of teams that are a little iffy. I don't think San Diego's even getting that great of attendance, which is a bit strange given the fact that they have a superstar team. They haven't had a ton of playoff success, but they've been really, really good in the regular season for their whole existence. So I'm a little surprised that their numbers are that low. And now that Vancouver has a team that their fans can be proud of, there's lots of them. So they were hitting great attendance numbers last year, and I'm sure that will continue this year. So I think there's a lot more teams that are doing well and fewer teams that are in trouble. And that seems to be kind of the general trend over the last few years. So if we can keep that going, then that would be ideal for the league.
Yeah, there were definitely a few teams, like you mentioned there, that had lower numbers, but I think even San Diego was hovering around the 8,000 mark, if I'm not mistaken, last year on average. So, that's we're moving towards that. And I know in general, the attendance numbers are overall getting better, it looks like. I'm excited to see what happens in Toronto with back in Hamilton, because they have I think a capacity of about 18,000 now. So it's going to be interesting to see how much they can fill it, or, at least what percentage they can get to. So if you could be commissioner for one day, what would one thing you would try to implement to, improve the league, whether that be rule or, marketing or whatever like that?
Wow. One thing that I have said, I've actually answered this question before, and I think the answer that I gave in the past was that I'd like to see the rule that basically the shot clock is turned off when you're killing a penalty. And I think they do that in MSL, or maybe they did at one point, but I'm not sure if it's still there. But the idea is, if you're killing a penalty and you're able to run around with the ball for 2 full minutes and the other team can't get it away from you, good for you. You can go ahead and do that. And I started thinking about players like Mark Stainhouse and Blaine Manning. These are kind of going back a few years. Those kind of guys were just really good at just ragging the ball. They'd take the ball, they'd go down in the corner, they'd have 2, 3, 4 defenders all pounding on them and manage to keep the ball for as long as they possibly could. And when you're killing a penalty, that's helpful. And I think in certain cases, I've talked to other people about this potential rule, and they don't like it. Basically because every now and again, you're going to get a Mark Stainhouse who's able to do that, and it's really exciting and it's really entertaining to watch him keep the ball. What's mostly going to happen is players aren't quite as good as Stainhouse at doing that. So they'll end up down in the corner, drop on top of the ball as much as they can and just sit there. And the other defenders will be pounding on them. But instead of watching somebody keep the ball while defenders are trying to get it away from them, it ends up just being a kind of a scrum in the corner for as long as possible. And that's not terribly exciting to watch, particularly if it's going to be for the full 2 minutes. Maybe I have to back off on that. So I'm not sure. That's kind of been my stock answer for that question, but now I don't know what that should be, because I've been convinced that wouldn't be a good idea.
All right, that's okay, man. That's honestly, I can see that being problematic, but I can also see where you're saying, essentially, if a defense can hold onto a ball and, and they're down a man or 2 men, and the other team can't get it off them, then why would they be penalized for that, right? So that kind of does make sense, honestly. So let's talk about standings for a minute. Do you like the unified standings, or do you think we should need to go back to East versus West?
There are certainly pros and cons to each. The East versus West was nice because you get sort of the rivalries. You get Toronto versus Buffalo a couple times, Toronto versus Rochester, Buffalo versus Rochester, Saskatchewan, Calgary. That the rivalries you see 2 or 3, sometimes 4 times a year. And that's kind of good, but at the same time, when I look at the Rock schedule, I'd say, okay, we play Buffalo 3 times, we play Rochester 3 times, we play Halifax twice. And I think The Rock went something like 10 years and played Colorado once in that time. So I'm sure there were players or fans in Vancouver and San Diego and Colorado who'd say, we'd like to see Jeff Teat more than once every 5 years. So that was a problem there. In general, I love the unified standings. It makes everything so much more exciting. You get to see the teams from the other division a lot more. The fact that it's just one division. So if you have one division that's much stronger than the other, you don't have one division that has all the strong teams and one division that has weaker teams, and a team that had a mediocre 7-9 season makes the playoffs, where a team in the other division that was 10-8 doesn't make the playoffs because all four teams ahead of them also finished 10-8 and they lost the tiebreaker or something. But it just opens things up a lot more, and forces every team that makes the playoffs to actually earn it, which wasn't always the case for the third and fourth teams in each division beforehand. So I certainly like the unified standings.
Yeah, I mean, I like the unified standings too, I think, for the most part. I do think that if they could even out the league so you had the same amount of teams on the West as the East versus West could work kind of deal. I also think I would like to see probably, if I could see my ideal schedule, with the current games that are available, I would say every team play one game, everybody play each other at least once a season. And then, like, I'm disappointed we're only going to get to see Buffalo versus Toronto once this year is really what the thing that bums me out with the schedule this year. Honestly,
That was
that's the
certainly
one
the
thing.
advantage of the divisions.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the only thing. But okay, man. So let's talk some underrated players. Who do you think, if you could kind of choose one guy that you think is going to have a really good season that nobody's talking about, who would you think? Who would you say that is?
Feeling we're going to see a rejuvenated Ryan Benesh this year. It's not like he wasn't not very good last year or anything like that. I didn't think he was still in the 80, 85 something point range last year. But a lot of people have said this might be his last season, and everybody wants to get him that cup that he's not gotten in his 15, almost 20-year career. I think I've heard people say this might be Ryan Benesh's last season for at least the last 3 years. And so every year we go into it assuming this might be his last season, but he's not playing like that. I mean, he's not quite Matt Vince, which is the same thing every year for the last 5 years. Oh, this might be Matt Vince's last year because he's almost 40. Now he is 40. He's 42 now. So it's just, assumed that he's on the cusp of retiring, and same with Benesh. I saw bits of him in the Georgia game. I didn't see much of that game, honestly. Um, I can see with the cast surrounding him. Um, I can see him having a really solid season. Yeah, I don't know if he's going to break 100 points again. I think he's done that once, but I don't think this is just throw him in there, let's get him the championship, and he'll chip in 25 points. Like, he's going to be a contributor on the Bandits.
Yeah, man, I think that's a good take too, because I think that Buffalo makes a lot of sense for him. I do think Buffalo is still a pretty good shot at going, like, winning another one, going 4 in a row, maybe even 5. Like, we won't get there quite yet, but I do think Buffalo, a lot of people aren't as high on them as I think they should be after all the moves. But okay, so give me some, who do you think is going to take MVP as well, and like goalie of the year if you had to pick right now?
Christian Del Bianco is a fairly solid choice for goalie of the year, I think. I've heard people talking about him as MVP as well, and he's done that in the past for sure. But I can see Jeff Teat finally getting the MVP. I think he's been in the MVP finalists for the last couple of years. Assuming he gets Ottawa into the playoffs, doesn't even have to go far into the playoffs, I don't think. But if he can make them a playoff team, I can see Jeff Teat doing that. And I know picking Jeff Teat to win MVP, even though he hasn't actually won it yet, is not a super hot take, but I think he can do it. Dane Smith is always a good choice as well. If I had to pick a dark horse, actually, Teddy Jenner said Andrew Q on Colorado might be a good choice, and I can see that happening. I can see him and Will Malcolm and Ryan Lee forming just a deadly trio up front. Yeah, those three, maybe even Westberg in San Diego if they have a good year. I can see that happening as well. He's one of those guys who is an offensive guy and could be considered MVP even if he doesn't even lead his own team in scoring. He's one of those guys that can obviously do it himself, but is so good at setting up his teammates and as they say, making everybody else better, and that I can see him winning that if San Diego has a good season.
Yeah, absolutely. I could see either one of those guys winning. It'd be nice to see Jeff Teat win an MVP. I think it's going to depends on if he can drag the this Black Bears to the playoffs, but I think if anybody can do it, it's got to be him, right? Okay, so let's just talk about the media side things really quick. Like, what's your toughest part about covering the NLL?
For me, it's a bit different because I'm independent. I don't work for the league. I don't work for Inside Lacrosse anymore. And so it's just me. And I don't know the players personally. I don't know. I've talked to Jamie Dowick in person. He's probably one of the very few people from the league that I've actually spoken to in person and sort of know to see. But I'm not an insider. So I find out about trades when everybody else does. I find out about, this team is like the Firewolves are moving from Albany to Oshawa. I found that out when everybody else did. And it certainly seems when I'm talking to other media people and like broadcasters and things, they all have some sort of inside track. Like, here's something that's going to happen. Don't tell anybody, but here's something that's upcoming. And I don't get any of that. And I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. Maybe it's just my ego. I would like to be included in that group but for no particular reason. Because that's the kind of thing like I can't really write about that before it happens anyway, because you're not supposed to announce it. Maybe it would save me time because I could write about it before it's announced and then just not publish it until it's announced or something. But like I said, that just might be me being jealous that they have this inside knowledge and I don't have it.
Do you find have you been reached out to by anybody from like, traditional media to give you information that hasn't been out yet that you can leak? Like, because I've had it happen to me.
I think I have talked to somebody about, and I won't drop any names, but
Yeah, of course not.
I did talk to somebody about something that was happening, and I basically emailed them or texted them or something and said, "Do you have any kind of information on this?" I won't I'm not going to publish it. I'm not going to tweet it. I'm not going to say anything about it at all. I'm just curious what direction this is going, and they gave me a bit more information that wasn't public, but like only once or twice, so it hasn't happened much. But then again, I
Now,
haven't asked much, so maybe if I asked more often, I would get more.
Now, do you find that the NLL does enough to support independent media? I know you said you haven't talked to too many people from the NLL officially, but I would think you're on their radar.
Yeah, I know that there are executives in the NLL who read what I write. And I have gotten emails from a few of the execs at the NLL who do read what I write. And every now and again, they'll send me an email saying, "Hey, I read your article about whatever it was. Here's the real information. And you got this part right and you got that part wrong. And and just as a clarification." And so I posted updates to my blog saying, "This is what I said last week. I heard from the NLL that that's actually not true. Here's the correction." And Ed Durst and Joel Feld from the NLL, they're both involved in the media broadcasting sort of side of things. They actually initiated a conversation with me about NLL Plus when that debuted year before last, I guess it was. And they said, "You seem sort of interested in the broadcasting side of things, and rather than being a broadcaster, you write about it. So maybe you would be a good person to get this information out." So they gave me all kinds of information about how NLL Plus worked, where the idea came from, who the partners are that are helping do this. And so I wrote a couple of articles about that, sort of with their sort of, go ahead on this. So that was kind of cool. So from that point of view, yeah, they've helped me a little bit by giving me that kind of information and corrections of stuff that I've said wrong.
But what kind of keeps you motivated to keep writing for this? Because you're obviously doing it mainly for the love of the game, right? Just like I am.
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit, I did get paid by IL Indoor. It wasn't a lot, but it was something. But I don't work for IL Indoor anymore. Yeah, other than what IL Indoor paid me for the time I worked for them, my total income from lacrosse media has been zero. In fact, it cost me money to host NLL Stats, and I don't have a donation bin or anything on the website because that's not what it's for. It's not. I didn't create this as a money-making operation. It's just love of the game. Like you said, I love writing about it. There's some ego involved in that if I see a player or a coach or a NLL exec or owner or something who retweets something that I've said or posts something saying, "Hey, read this article by Graham. It's great." I get a lot of satisfaction out of that, knowing that these people who know the game infinitely more than I do have read something that I've read and didn't think, "This guy doesn't know what he's talking about." So just the fact that that's happened even just a handful of times is very satisfying. It's very fulfilling. Yeah, so it's very fulfilling to do that. People look at what I read people look at what I write and are interested by it, which is it's nice because it's something I'm always writing about stuff that interests me. So to find that other people are interested in the same thing is very cool.
Yeah, man. I mean, like I said, like your articles are great. The stat stuff you do is just amazing, and it's no surprise that people love your stuff. And I don't think you give yourself enough credit. I think you're definitely way more knowledgeable than probably so many other people. So your takes are amazing, dude. All right, so just one last quick question. We'll wrap this up. But if there's some piece of advice you could give to anybody aspiring to get to where you're at, what would it be?
Basically, two things. One, keep trying, just keep going, and don't be afraid to fail. When you're starting out, and I'm only speaking from a writing point of view. I'm not a broadcaster, never have been or anything, but I imagine it kind of applies anyway. When you start out writing, you're gonna suck for a while, and nobody's gonna read it, or people are gonna read it and think this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, and that might even be true. I'm sure if I look back on some of the first few lacrosse articles I wrote back in 2005 or six or whenever it was, I'm sure that I had no kind of insight as to what was going on, but I just kept writing. I found the writing part fun, even if nobody was reading it. I enjoyed the writing part of it. So that's what kept me going for a while. And then it wasn't till I'd been doing that for 5 or 6 or 7 years that I realized, okay, I seem to kind of know what I'm talking about to some extent. It's not just some idiot that doesn't know the game at all spouting off about stuff. I'm somewhat knowledgeable, and I sort of look back at it and realized the fact that I just kept writing for all that time, even though nobody was reading it, made me better at it. And so for that first little while, and it may not be 5 years for everybody, it just might be 1 or 2, but realize that when you start out, you're going to suck. You're going to get better. And then gradually over time, people are going to realize, hey, this guy actually does know what he's talking about. And it just gets better from there. But like I said, don't be afraid to fail and just keep trying.
I love that, man, because that's the thing. Just consistency and dedication is really all you need. That's what I'm trying to show people too by doing this. And I'm the same boat as you, probably not as knowledgeable. Just trying to get lacrosse out there, fell in love with it, and there's not enough media, so I appreciate everything you're doing, and love that it's all accessible for everyone to see. So thank you anyway, man, Graham, for being on the show. I really appreciate it. A lot of great answers here, and I know the fans are gonna love it. So we'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Great. All right. Thanks a lot for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, no problem. Thanks, buddy. All right. So that was an interview with Graham Perrow. Absolutely amazing interview. The guy is a stud, man. He, everything he does for the lacrosse community, which obviously you heard about, is just, he does out of the goodness of his heart, and he just the love for the game and everything. And he's helped grow the game so much, I think. I don't think he gets enough credit being an independent journalist. And I think it's even harder to be an independent journalist because, on top of your day job, you're doing this as your hobby, on nights, on weekends, on whatever. And, I always say it like this, I don't find this stuff to be hard work. I find it to be time consuming, just doing all the editing, making the content, all that stuff. But to me, it's fun to do. I do really enjoy what I do. And that's kind of like Graeme, right? He even said, it's when you start, nobody really listens to you or nobody reads your stuff, but you're just doing it to enjoy the craft. And it's like practicing, right? Even realistically, like, right now I might get 20, 30, 40 views on this podcast, but I am practicing and making myself better. I hope at least I am. I hope I'm getting better at this. I think I am. I try to take constructive criticism where it comes in, or at least look at it, right? So it's like kind of like taking reps. Like if you're out there shooting at the net or shooting baskets, right? Before a game. It's the same thing. So even though you might not think somebody's listening to you, well, as you get the bigger audience and as you keep being consistent and keep putting content out and your content gets better and the audience gets bigger, that's just going to make you become better at your craft. So that's kind of how I look at it. And I really enjoy what I do here. So for me, again, it doesn't seem like I'm working or when I'm doing this. And I think Graeme feels the same way, honestly. So thank you, Graeme, for being on here. It was a pleasure to have you, buddy. And I'm sure we're going to be on there again together sometime, right? So great times for Graeme. And we appreciate everything he does over there. So let's get right into the power rankings now. The NLL. Of course, I have to disagree with the NLL, the league. It's I feel like it's becoming part of my image at this point, is to disagree with the league. So as always, I like to rip on the league, but I always like to kind of give them a little bit of praise first, and they are doing a great job. So that's my praise to the video before I start doing this. So not too hard though. So here's the power rankings. We got Buffalo in first, then Saskatchewan, then Vancouver, then Rochester, Halifax, San Diego, Oshawa, and Toronto. Now, for the most part, I do mostly agree with that. Saskatchewan to me should be number one. Buffalo, they were okay, but were they great? Dane Smith really put them on his back there, in my opinion. I don't think they should be first, but anyway, Saskatchewan again, just like I said, they're first, so I think second is obviously that's not that far of a reach. You got Vancouver at third. I have to disagree with this. When you lose to a team that's not even in the top 8, which we're going to talk about in a minute, you shouldn't be third in the power rankings. This is crazy. Why are you glazing Vancouver so hard, league? And I get it, right? They've added a lot of big players. They've added a lot of big names. They were good last year already, so they should be better this year in theory. They're just getting warmed up, right? It's only week 1. I'm not panicking yet for them, but do I think they should be ranked ranking 3 after coming up a loss and you put up 7 goals? No, I don't think that. I'm sorry. That's not good enough, Vancouver. It just is what it is, All you have to do is go put goals up. That's it. And you guys should be able to do it. You're playing, definitely coming week 3, you're going to be playing you're playing a lower tier defense. So I expect you to get more goals. But to be ranked 3 here is not right. Rochester at 4. I mean, people are really high on Rochester. So, I'm going to say I don't personally agree with this, but at the end of the day, I do see how this could be in there. I just think that for me, I think there's teams that are better than Rochester, but I think Rochester should still be ranked at around 6 right now, to be honest with you. They haven't played yet. We don't know what they're really going to look like coming out this season. Just to have them at 4th, again, I don't really see that. We got Halifax at 5th. Halifax is a veteran team. They're a Final Four team last year. Personally, I have them in my top 4. A lot of people have Rochester in the top 4, so the league putting Halifax at 5 isn't surprising to me. And actually, this is one that I would probably agree with right now. Maybe not if Vancouver could slide back. I think maybe Halifax should be 4th, but I can see 5th for Halifax. It's not the end of the world. And if they can go in and beat Oshawa this week, I would expect them to raise up there a little bit for next week and get in the top 4. Then we got San Diego at 6. San Diego won this week, right? Beat Ottawa. They look good, man. I was a hater, dude. I really did not have confidence in this team. I thought they were going to lose. I'm already wrong about them, right? This is the thing about me. I'll admit when I'm wrong. I was wrong about San Diego. They had an amazing preseason. They lit Vancouver up. They had, they just played Ottawa. They played really good against them. They got, that Leclerc that's really good. They have Berg that's, a fantastic guy. They got Small that looked good. They looked overall good. They've got Irregularity that played well, and he's back. He's playing. That was a question mark before. So with all that being said, San Diego in this spot, again, this doesn't bother me really. I do understand it, right? Then we've got, and even honestly, if they were in the top 4 right now, I would be like, yeah, I can understand it because they've been playing so well, to be honest with you. Power rankings, right? I don't think, again, Vancouver shouldn't be there. Then we got Oshawa. Oshawa, yeah, they should be in the top, 7th, I think, honestly, for Oshawa is a good spot. And depending if they can beat Halifax, you might see them at 5th next week, right? So we'll see what happens there. Oshawa, it's gonna look good for them if they can go 2 games in a row. And then you have Toronto Rock, right? So Toronto Rock, this is where I think that they should be off the top 8. And this comes into where the heck is Colorado, right? So Colorado beat your quote unquote 3rd ranked Vancouver Warriors and they're not in the top 8. Now listen, guys, I was low on Colorado before the preseason. Then I watched them in the preseason, and then I was like, wow, this team's actually really good. They smother the other team's offense really well. They have amazing goalie, top 5 goalie of all time in Dylan Ward. Great backup as well. And then you've got the offensive presence this year. They had Will Malcolm put up 6 this weekend. You had Andrew Hugh there, right? He had a big game. You've got these guys who are such studs on offense, and you've got such a good defense. And you're telling me they didn't make the top 8 power rankings after that? You don't think they're going to make the playoffs? Because I disagree. And the fact that Toronto lost and they're there, Colorado won and they're not there, doesn't make any sense when they beat a team in your top 8. That makes 0 sense to me. So if it makes sense to you, please put it down in the comments. But it doesn't make any sense to me. I can tell you that. So that's my really rant with this. Of course, I always had to go at the league. But at the end of the day, these power rankings don't mean really much right now. Like they don't, right? Because we're so only week one in the regular season, and not all the teams have played yet. So week 2 is almost like a continuation of week 1. The only team that I think it would have been nice to see them take Oshawa out this week and get Philly in there, or get Vegas in there, or a team that hasn't played yet. That's the only gripe I have there. But I understand schedule issues and all this stuff. I understand all that. It's just, if I'm coming from a fan's point of view, I'm like always looking at the fucking best case scenario, right? So realism and that stuff, I don't really pay attention too much towards. So there's your power rankings. What do you guys think about them? I think they're wrong, and we'll see how much they change next week. So stay tuned for that. Now I want to shout out The Mighty Oaks. Now, The Mighty Oaks is a documentary that's dropping December 9th about a high school team you get to watch them go from not knowing how to play lacrosse at all the way up to playing for a championship, essentially, right? So this is coming out on Amazon Prime. It's on Apple TV as well, and wherever else he's got. I think might be able to get it on YouTube. Go support this, okay? This is great for the lacrosse community. I'm going to be buying it myself. I'm going to be watching it with my kids. I think there's going to be a good message in there. I interviewed Brad, one of the producers, really the guy who started it all, when I was doing this last month, and we were talking about it. And like just off the trailer, just off the TikTok that I just seen get dropped today or yesterday, whatever, I'm hyped. I'm so hyped for this documentary. I think it's going to be interesting. It shows realism. It shows a community that's not a lacrosse community that has become a lacrosse community. And it shows people that are bonding together and embracing it and getting these roots deep rooted into lacrosse, into that community. And that is what we need to do in order to grow this sport. I know a couple guys out in California that are trying to grow the sport right now, and I think that it's fast growing. And if this is exactly the same thing that happened with the NHL and hockey, it started to make its way out there. It became very popular, and that's where we're at with lacrosse right now, is we're going to see the same thing, guys. History doesn't always repeat, but it does rhyme, and that's exactly what this is. So, it's going to be, I think it's very important to support this project, and I'm passionate about it. And, if you can do anything for me, please go order this, because I want to see more lacrosse content be made. I would love to see more of like a newer film production about, and of course it has to have the natives involved, or it's not the same. I would love to see premise for a movie would be like, a native team comes in and they have to go to a tournament. They have to raise money to get to this tournament, and then they get there and they just smack everybody. And they it could be an historical something based around, a true tournament that happened in the past. I just think it would be a great way to kind of add to the community in lacrosse. So again, go support the Mighty Oaks. This was years and years in the making, and like I said, I can't wait to watch it. I'll do a review on it once I am, and I'm not sponsored by these guys. We have touched base a little bit, and they were going to give me a pre-screening. I don't know if they're still going to do that. I don't really care, to be honest with you. If they don't give me a pre-screening, it's not going to change anything in me. I'm still going to still promote the movie. I'm still going to watch it and order it myself, because I believe in this project, and I think Brad's a great guy, and I think the whole story is a great guy. So I think it's great for the whole community. So go check it out, please, and thank you. And that's it, guys. That's the show right there for this week. These previews will be a lot longer in most of these episodes, but I'm just doing this as a format. Let me know if you like it. I'm doing the preview for the week on this episode, which will be dropping Thursday, and I do the post-week recap on the Mondays. So, and I'm going to try to do interviews, I think, once a week. I like having the full episode to really go in depth onto each episode. And I don't know. I'm kind of just trying different formats to see what you guys like. I mean, some people I've been told that they really like these interviews. I really like doing these interviews. And then other people just seem to like me talking for an hour and a half, or an hour and 20 minutes, whatever it may be, or an hour or whatever. But so I'm just kind of put it in the comments. If you're still here, I really appreciate you being here as always. I hope you guys enjoyed everything, and I have fun making this content, and I'm just trying to add more eyes more everything to this lacrosse game because I just seen somebody on TikTok today. They said they went to one first Buffalo Bandits game was this weekend against Georgia, and now they're a lifelong fan. They said they're like, and again, guess what their name was? Had hockey in it. So it's again, you get these hockey fans to the thing, and they just get hooked. So anyway, thanks for coming, guys. We're gonna watch both games, go live for both games. So if you're around, check out, jump in the live. I post in my Discord always, but just go to TikTok. I'm on there. If there's a game on, if there's a Leaf game on, if there's a lacrosse game on, I'm going live. With all that being said, thanks for coming. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. My name is Jacob McDonald. I'm Anything Lacrosse, and this is a game that never sits still. We'll talk to you guys later. Have a good night.